Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Clueless Capitalists with me, Razi and Osman. And today we have a very special guest, Reyasat, who is the co-founder of Shuttle. So in the previous episode, we did speak about Shuttle, which is a mass transit startup from Bangladesh, which is looking to make it cheaper, more affordable, and more importantly, more safe for people to travel in Bangladesh. And they started out with a mission to make transportation safer for women. So Reyasat, thank you so much for making some time for us today.
Thank you so much, Razi, for inviting me to this show. I'm excited to talk about our journey and future plans. Yeah.
Okay, so we spoke about Shuttle the last episode, me and Osman. So since we have you here with us, maybe you can share a little bit more about Shuttle.
Yeah, sure. So at Shuttle, we are trying to make daily commutes convenient and affordable for the median income people in developing countries. Right now, we are only operating in Bangladesh, but we do feel that the solution can be implemented in other developing countries as well. Essentially, what we do is we club 4 to 10 people together and then charge less than 1/3 the price of regular ride sharing. So that's the value proposition. And as you also mentioned, initially we started as a women-only service and later branched out to B2B, and now we also have a unisex service. So it's been more than 4 years, and be excited so far.
Yeah, one of the big challenges that we had since we invested was the pandemic, right? And I feel that there's certain things that need to be done as a founder of a startup to help our companies tide through this whole period, right? So maybe you could share with us what were some of the things that have happened, that you have done, that your team has done to help Shuttle tide through this period.
Sure. When the pandemic first hit back in March 2020 in Bangladesh, it was a very uncertain period because no one knew what exactly lockdown was, because we haven't seen something like this before, and we haven't faced pandemic either. So it was completely uncertain. But what we knew was that the time will pass for sure, and we just have to make sure that we can survive and hopefully grow as well. Just before the pandemic, like 3 months before the pandemic, we actually started our B2B service. Initially, we were solely a B2C company, but just before the pandemic in, I think, October 2019, we started providing the B2B service as well. So when the pandemic first hit, our B2C service was completely paused because we were mostly catering to university students and they didn't have any class anymore. So, but there were a few companies that were open during the lockdown, especially the banks, government organizations, and e-commerce companies. So we solely focus on them. We actually wanted to make sure that we can provide safe and sanitized solution to these companies, because these companies, they probably were operating on a small scale, probably 10 to 20% of their employees were going to office, but they wanted to make sure that they take proper care of these employees. So, and they were actually not price sensitive. The most important thing for them was ensuring the safety of their employees. We capitalized on that opportunity. We solely focused on B2B, and luckily at a time when almost all the transportation companies were in hibernation, our revenue actually grew almost 100% during the lockdown period compared to the pre-pandemic state. So it was pretty exciting. And as I mentioned, in 2020, initially we didn't know what's going to happen. So the first thought was that we have to survive. So we were actually cash flow positive. In 2020, we didn't require any investment money to operate. Even though in 2021 we started scaling and all that, but in 2020 the initial plan was to survive the pandemic, and we're really happy that we were able to operate on a positive cash flow.
That's really amazing to hear, right? That it wasn't just it was necessitated by survival, but then you ended up growing 100%. So this idea of going for the B2B sector, like how did that come about? Like what sparked it,
Yeah, so initially when we started back in 2018, we knew that we wanted to serve all the segments like women, unisex, and food as well, and then also B2B companies. But we wanted to be very focused. So initially we started with a women-only service. And we were always looking for other opportunities, exploring other opportunities. But for the first 2 years, we solely provided one service, which was women-only B2C service. but we were having, different potential clients as well, just to explore, the opportunities. So at one point, we had like few users, B2C users, who were working for a company called Standard Chartered Bank. And so they were really happy with us. They were really happy with the quality of the service and safety and everything. So they talked to their HR department to explore if they can do a collaboration with Shuttle. So we had a meeting with them, and after we sat with the HR team, we actually realized that there are several issues that B2B companies have to face when they think about providing transportation for their employees. So just to summarize the pain points, the first one was that when these companies, they rent vehicles from rental car companies, they have to rent it for the entire day, which costs them a lot of money, but they actually need the vehicle only twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. Secondly, especially for big companies, they need a separate team to manage the operation, because other transportation companies, they don't provide any operational support, they just provide the vehicle. It required a lot of manpower and significant hours to manage everything. So that was the second issue. And the third one was that usually in Bangladesh, the companies that provide transportation, they do everything manually. So, keeping the log sheets, and all the data, for example, how many kilometers the vehicles have run, at what time the drivers came, and things like that. So it was very manual. It took a lot of time, and also it was not easy to manage to get the correct data. So these are the three pain points that we identified, and focusing on these three pain points, we actually launched Shuttle for Business that address these key issues. The first one, we have separate app for all the B2B clients, and then we also provide a dashboard to the HR or admin department of these companies, so that they can get real-time information about all the transportation data. And we also have, a dedicated relationship manager for each of our clients, so that that person can handle all the issues. And all the other support, for example, the 24 hours customer support, and also, customers routes and things like that are also available. And especially during the pandemic, as I was saying, safety became a very important factor. So at that point, in addition to all these things, how we sanitize the vehicle, how we maintain safety for the employees was an important factor as well. So one question that might come to everyone's mind is that, so since Shuttle provides a service where few people share the ride together, the chances might increase of spreading the infection. But the thing is, from the company's perspective, they already know that their employees are coming to office and they're working together. So as long as they're not, sharing the rides with other people, that was fine with them. So that is why they wanted to make sure that they come with Shuttle, so that people who are working in office, they're coming together as well. So that is something that we made sure, and also provided all kinds of safety options. For example, in the vehicle, we always have hand sanitizers available for the customers. Our drivers always wear masks and gloves, and these were also available for passengers as well. And the vehicle was always sanitized before each trip.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Reyasat. Osman, you had some questions.
Well, from my perspective, just a few observations really. When we talked about this in the previous session, Razi, we talked about, how do you evaluate a startup? And here's a classic example of the numbers and the metrics looked great when we were talking to Reyasat right at the very start. And things happen, stuff happens and life happens and things go wrong. And really, when we were evaluating Shuttle, just purely on the numbers, it made sense. But what really made sense at the time was that did we like the founders? Did we trust them? Did we think that they could execute upon their plan? Absolutely, right? And then COVID happened. And in any other type of industry, people would have just tried to ride it out and wait and sit and hope that after a few months something would change or something would go well. But Reyasat and the management team here, they didn't just sit back and hope that something would happen. They identified the threat, seized the opportunity, and pivoted. And pivoting happens in startups, we know that. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's about the team and whether they're able to execute on the vision and still deliver And this is what they've done. They've carried on growing, and it reinforces our belief that the founders are great, the management team are excellent. Can they continue to execute and develop on growth even as things change moving forward? We've got Omicron now, and we don't know where that's going to end up. We've got potentially opening up and going back to the office, the pandemic, and lots of people now working remotely from home. What does that mean for the business post-pandemic? I'm not particularly worried, because I know that seeing how the business has pivoted so far and how it's executed, that it's already leveraging some of the changes that are happening within the Bangladesh market to overcome those challenges moving forward. And I think that's what a lot of the people that are watching this episode should take away, is that the metrics are one thing, but you've got to really trust and believe in the founders as well. So that's my observation, and I think it's a good takeaway to have. Get to know them, get to know the founders, get to understand what their motivations are. Do you trust them? Do you trust that they can deliver? And ultimately, that's how we ended up investing. Because there were a number of different investments, correct, Razi, that we could have looked at.
Yeah.
Shuttle were one of those that stood out. They had a mission to deliver on the social development goals, on safety for women. They had a noble goal, but they also had the ability to deliver on a number of different aspects. They weren't just a one-trick pony, as we call it in English.
And I think one of the things you were mentioning also was the importance of like us liking the founder, us trusting that this founder can actually deliver. And one thing that we really appreciated about Reyasat and his founding team was that they've always been in contact. They're easily within reach, and they are there to answer our questions, and they're just there to keep us updated with what's going on. And I think that's something that is sometimes not possible when it comes to certain founders. Like, they're not always there to respond, or sometimes they get too busy and they're not able to update the investors, especially when you're a small angel investor.
Yeah, I mean, and again, when we say that we're called the Clueless Capitalists, we genuinely are. We don't know what we don't know, and we are learning as we go along. And Reyasat and the team didn't take advantage of that. They were open to answering our questions, even as mundane and stupid as they were. When you look back in hindsight, you think, did I really ask that question? And that also helps, because then you're more comfortable as an angel investor. If you know that the founders are tolerating your bullshit and working with you on that, what does that mean? It means that you're more comfortable as an angel investor to bring other people in, and that increases the deal size. So it was just initially just me and Reyasat talking, then it was you, me, and Reyasat, and then there were like 3 other people that came in on that round. Why? Because we felt confident that the other people who also didn't know felt confident enough to ask the questions that they had, and Reyasat and the team were willing to address them. Yeah, so it was a win-win, where you kind of lead us through, the founders bring us through on that journey, and we're also able to bring other people in on that journey too.
So then for Reyasat, right, so like earlier you were mentioning about how in the pandemic, and also Osman was mentioning, and what we've experienced is that people have shifted to working from home, university students learning online, which has impacted the B2C part of things. How has the pandemic impacted the ride-sharing space in Bangladesh?
Great question. During the pandemic, the lockdown, the typical ride sharing that we know, on-demand services, they were actually completely paused. But because of the modality of our service, where we actually, provide the service either in minivans or sedan, but people share together, and we mostly work with companies, we actually provide the service all the time, and we didn't face any problem in terms of providing the service. The only reason we actually discontinued paused the B2C service was because there was not enough demand, because people were not commuting at that time, other than the people who were going to offices for emergency work. So for us, it was actually, as I mentioned, it was a blessing. Our revenue grew almost 100% during the lockdown. And what's more interesting is that as we have seen in the last few months after the lockdown has been lifted, more and more people are getting interested in such a service, because right now, even though they're coming back to office, they want to make sure that they have a proper way of commuting. And previously, probably 5 to 10% of the companies provided transportation to their employees, and right now it's increasing, significantly. We're getting a lot of queries from companies that has never provided transportation to employees, but right now they're exploring that. And employees as well, they're not only looking for a basic salary, they're also looking for other perks, including the transportation. And if a company provides transportation, that's probably more valuable than the cash salary. So that is something that we're also trying to establish, that each company, the way they provide, the option to people to work from home and or office lunch and pizzas and all that, they should also include transportation as a basic benefit for the employees. And people are doing that. Most of the companies are really interested in that, and that is something that we foresee as well. That going forward in the next 2-3 years, we feel that most of the companies will have transportation support for their employees. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they will incur higher costs. It just means that probably the overall package for the employees will include this transportation option.
Well, to me, it sounds like there'll be these workers will feel very, very well taken care of by their employer, and when you commute to work.
Razi,
yes.
I'm really sorry for interrupting you. So just to add, after actually we resumed our office around November last year, we also started providing transportation to our employees, because we have seen how important it is to our employees. They were actually really happy, and we have seen significant increase in productivity and also satisfaction among the employees, just because they feel that the company is taking care of them. So we feel that it's more than just providing transportation. It also has a bigger impact.
Definitely. Then that brings one question to mind, right? Like, what is the average commute time? Like, just say one way, so from home to the office. Like, what's the average commute time in a city like Dhaka?
It is actually very long. It takes around 1.5 hours on a day.
Wow. And it's one and a half hours in something that's very crowded, and there's a lot of I think by the time you get to the office, you probably already feel tired just from that effort exerted to make the commute, right? So I'd say for the companies, while it is a fantastic perk for the employees, I think the positive side of things for an employer is that you have employees who come to work and they are well rested. They can take a nap, they can listen to something productive, and they can come to work all ready to work instead of feeling tired after having gone through like quite a intense commute.
Exactly. I totally agree. And another factor is that when the employees do not know exactly which transportation option they're going to use. For example, if they use like regular ride-sharing, in the morning they always have to go through that uncertain period where they are just trying to get an Uber or something, and sometimes it takes a long time. And they might be late as well. And from the employer's end as well, they don't necessarily push people to come office on time, because since they are providing transportation, everyone is coming together at the same time. So that is another factor that really helps the companies to maintain the office timing properly.
Yeah, it kind of reiterates some of the challenges that everyone feels, even in Singapore. Where you'd think that transportation is really easy and we take it for granted. Even here in Singapore, where it is comfortable, just trying to get hold of a rideshare can be really difficult, especially when you need it. When it's really raining heavily, suddenly you can't get hold of an Uber or a Grab or whatever service is being offered. And sometimes you just don't want to get onto the MRT because, again, the issues around the pandemic and wanting to mingle with the general public, you're kind of reluctant to do that, and being able to have some level of confidence of being able to get to work on time and coming back, or getting to a particular location on time. We take it for granted in places like Singapore, but in Dhaka, where the transportation system is kind of just ad hoc, what you're providing as a service is something that we as foreigners don't understand. We don't really appreciate the level of the business problem. So And that's something that, as angels as well, we need to understand as well. When we listen to the problem statement, we've got to detach ourselves from what we know. We know Singapore, we know London, we know Brussels and Amsterdam, and we know how transportation systems work there. We don't know Dhaka, we don't know Karachi, we don't know Islamabad. You know, those types of locations have very different needs and challenges, and we have to take a step back, listen to the problem statement that you're trying to solve, and really trying to empathize. There's an element of empathy that we need to have, and then if you still don't believe it, go and experience it. But having said that, the amount of people that have all, you know, both me and Razi, we've been to Jakarta. We've experienced public transportation there. We really do have an appreciation for what it could be like in Dhaka, and the solution that you're providing is real value add, not just to the people, but to the businesses that operate within Dhaka. You know, they need to get their people to a location to work efficiently, and even with the rise of, you know, the remote working. I mean, I've been on numerous calls with people, and when they're taking a call from home, internet's not great, there's loads of traffic noise outside because it's really crowded. People want to go to the office. It's not like because of a pandemic and remote working's an option, it's not necessarily appropriate either. So the reason why I bring that up is because the next question that I have, and that's been posed by others, is post-pandemic, there's going to be a move to more remote working. Now, I kind of put the answer into, you know, up there, but want to hear it from you as to what you think is going to be the nature of transportation post-pandemic, but also really what you see as the next steps and the challenges moving forward, even if the pandemic prolongs itself. But what do you think are going to be the key challenges and focuses for you as a business?
Thank you for the questions, Osman. So I'll try to answer one by one. If I miss any questions, just let me know. Regarding what my forecast is or prediction is regarding what will be the future of work, I think initially when the lockdown started, people were really enjoying the remote work, and it was actually initially it was like very well accepted and people were loving it. But at one point, people got bored of it, and they realized that it's also hampering their productivity and all that, because they're just not. It's very difficult to work from home every day of the month for 30 days or probably a few months as well. So right now, what we are observing here in Bangladesh is that people want to go back to work. And in our office as well, I mean, during the lockdown, I mean, it was very difficult for us to maintain that bonding moral among the employees, because in fact for me to communicate with each of my employees, because it was always not feasible. So after we started working from office, we have seen instant shift in terms of how the productivity increased. But at the same time, I believe that in the future, people will always have the option to work from home. In our case as well, before the pandemic, we would never allow people to work from home. We'd not give that option. But right now, if someone wants, on a certain day, if a person says that he's not feeling well or he wants to work from home, we usually allow that, even though it's not something that we already have in our plan. But I mean, if someone wants it, we almost always allow it. So I think it will be hybrid for sure. But at the same time, I feel that overall requirement for such a service will increase significantly, because as I mentioned earlier, previously probably 5 to 10% companies were providing transportation for their employees. But right now it's increasing significantly, and most of the leads that we're getting are from companies that never provided transportation for their employees. What was your second question? Could you repeat it, Osman?
I think in terms of the challenges moving forward as well, what other challenges do you see in general?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I would say is that right now, since Omicron, the lockdown, it seems like there might be more lockdowns in the future. So it's very uncertain. So I would say the challenge is the uncertainty, not the fact that there will be lockdown, but just the fact that we don't exactly know what's going to happen. because we have been able to figure out how we can navigate lockdowns and how we can make sure that we can not just survive but grow exponentially as well during the lockdown. But our strategies during the lockdown and when there's no lockdown are quite opposite, quite different. So shifting that strategy, on a regularly, is I would say the challenge. So that would be one of the biggest challenges. But at the same time, I think it also will help us to be more flexible and more. We have to adapt to the situation more quickly. That's something that we all have to learn to thrive in the business. So it's exciting, but at the same time, these are the big challenges.
Okay, but just one question that was posed by one of the other investors when we were having a previous call was just the elephant in the room. The big players like Uber. How do you? Their comment was these guys have got big pockets, deep pockets. They're willing to kind of like eradicate the competition just by outpricing them. And they can do a price war for a lot longer.
Yeah.
You've dealt with that question before, and so it's not a tough one for you to answer, but it's one that always crops up.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So right now, I think what we're trying to do is we are trying to create a completely new category. We are trying to redefine how the middle-income people in developing countries commute. So this is a segment that has never been catered by regular ride-sharing services like Uber and Grab or other companies. So I would say that we are actually not in the same space, even though we are both providing transportation support to people. We are completely different products. So the issue about price war is not going to happen in the short term because we have completely different products. But what will happen is that if we keep growing and if we are successful in creating the category, then these big companies would definitely need to come to this space as well. And we would actually love that. We would love these big companies to come in our space as well in the future, because that will increase our chances of collaboration and expansion as well in the future.
Okay. And from my perspective, just to put some realism to that answer, in Singapore, we know that Uber pulled out of Singapore and it's now down to Grab and Comfort there. It's like a duopoly of sorts. But what I have noticed from a personal perspective is that the prices have gradually gone up. Because there isn't that heavy competition, the prices have now normalized, where a $15 or a $10 journey is now near $25, $30, which for me still really makes me double check whether this is the most economical and advantageous method for me to get to where I want to be. But the real problem here is that, like you pointed out, Reyasat, there is no middle ground. It's either taking that Grab journey for near $30 or take public transport at $1.20. It doesn't, there's no in between here. I want the convenience of a ride share, but I really don't think it's cost effective to be paying nearly $30 for a journey. The fact that it's DACA doesn't mean that it's unique to you either. We see this in some of the more developed economies as well. So it's a good observation, and I think from an angel investor's perspective, being able to take that problem statement, understand what you're trying to address, and see how that's being addressed in your own market, you realise that there is a gap and you're addressing it. You've created that unique capability, which I really like. Just on a separate element here, when as an angel investor we put some money in, I've had experiences where you put money in, you reach out to the founder and you never hear back from them. The business is still operating, but it's very difficult to get that type of feedback on a regular basis. I'm a co-founder myself. I update my investors on a monthly basis through a number of different tools. How do you go about updating your investors?
Great. So, I try to maintain some principles. The first one is that not only my existing investors, but for potential investors as well, one rule that I always follow is that I always get back within 24 hours. That is something that I always want to follow. Whenever there's a query or some questions, I actually, whatever the answer is, I try to get back within 24 hours. And if I need more time, actually at least get back and let them know that I will be needing more time to get back with the data or the answer. So that is something that I always try to follow. And the second thing is, this is mostly for the existing investors. I try to update them on a monthly basis regarding the business, how the team is growing, what's the plan for the future, and the fundraising journey as well. These are the two things that I try to maintain. And also, especially after the last round, initially we just had one investor back in 2018 and 19, but after we onboarded all of you, I actually got a lot of value from all my angel investors, especially from you guys. I scheduled a call with you just to share updates and also take your feedback on the pitch deck, on the plans for the future, and also getting connected to other people as well. So that is one of the biggest value that I got, to be honest, from my investors. Osman has actually had probably more than 15 calls with me, just trying to help me in different ways. And I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, during those meetings as well, the investors get updated on what the company is doing and how it's planning for the future. So these are the few things that I usually try to maintain.
Great.
Well, since Reyasat, you mentioned the word future, right? So I'd like to know, like you mentioned that you've launched Shuttle unisex, right, for unisex. So tell us more about that, and also tell us like what are the plans that are coming for Shuttle in the next maybe 12 to 24 months.
Initially, even though we started as a women-only service, we regularly, used to get a lot of sign-ups from male users as well, and they would ask us why you are not launching a service for us as well. So we always tell them that we do that in the future. So, but initially we just have to, be very focused on and just serve the core TG that we had. But after operating for a few years, we gathered so much data, so many signups that we felt that it's the right time to get to these people. So that's why we right now have like two services. Within B2C, one is women only, and other is unisex. Women can also take rides in the unisex vehicles. So it's going really, really well. Right now, to be honest, that is more popular. For the last 4 months, we're actually growing almost 20% every week. So it's going really well. And as I mentioned, after the lockdown and the pandemic and everything, the popularity of public buses reduced even further. So everyone is looking for a safer option. Even though I wouldn't say we eliminate the chances of COVID entirely, but it's just a better option compared to public transportation. So that is something that we are observing, that people are looking for such a service. And since during the lockdown, the ride-sharing drivers actually were affected a lot, and a lot of them did not return back to their ride-sharing platforms anymore. The price has also gone up significantly in regular ride sharing, and that's why people are less and less people are able to afford them. So we're seeing a huge demand here, and our plan is to just right at the moment just to scale, because right now we are providing 1 or 2 trips per day in each of our route. Our plan is to provide 15 trips every 15 minutes during the peak hours, so that whenever a person gets out of office, they get a shuttle. And if we can offer that level of flexibility, we'll be able to provide a very valuable service or product to our customers. So for the next 2 years, that is the sole purpose, sole goal, just to scale and offer this flexibility to our users. Because right now, we believe that this is one of the biggest disadvantages of Shuttle. Everything else is covered. We are cheaper, we are safer and everything, but the fact that we don't have much option is limiting people's flexibility. So that is the goal for the next 2 years. And as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to create a completely new category. So that is the goal, to establish this category and scale the business. But what's equally interesting is that the customer segment that we have, they have the highest purchasing power in the country. They are young professionals, and their income is increasing every single year. They spend around 3 hours with us every single day, 1.5 hours in the morning, 1.5 hours in the evening. We know exactly where they live, exactly where they work, exactly what time they wake up, and exactly what time they leave their office. So a lot of revenues can be explored in the future, including delivery, advertisements, and also fintech. But those are things that we want to do after we establish the category.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting, right? Like, firstly, you're seeing 30% growth every week in the unisex category, and then like what you mentioned about who the riders are, how they have the highest purchasing power, and there's so much potential for what like auxiliary services that you can put around, ancillary services that you can put around that ride. Since we're on the topic of being clueless capitalists, right? I think a lot of the people that are, at least in my circles, we don't have much of an understanding of Bangladesh. But recently, over the past few months, we keep saying that Bangladesh has now overtaken some of the bigger economies in South Asia and now has the highest GDP per capita. So for everyone who's as clueless about Bangladesh as we are, maybe you can share with us, Reyasat, why angel investors and investors should be paying attention to Bangladesh.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel that this is like the best time to invest in Bangladesh is because 2-3 years down the line, the startup ecosystem in Bangladesh, we feel that it will just follow the similar path that we can see in other neighboring countries like India, Indonesia, and other countries. So it's the same pattern. It's happened to other countries as well, other developing countries and South Asian countries, and it's happening in Bangladesh as well. As you correctly mentioned, the GDP growth is highest. So it is. I feel the perfect time to invest right now is because you don't wanna join the club when it's already very popular. You want to get the benefit of investing before the value has increased significantly. So yeah, very exciting time. The last few years have been really amazing. We are seeing how the entire startup ecosystem in the country is growing and how the investment amounts are rising every single year. But for the next 2-3 years, I personally believe that we will see huge growth, and really excited for that.
That's definitely very, very exciting, right? So a few more questions from me. One of which is I attended a session from Bangladesh Angels Network, I think last week, and I think you're raising more money, right? So maybe you can share like what you plan to use it for.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we actually, after we resumed the B2C unisex service a few months earlier in August, we are observing a huge growth. So we want to capitalize on that and scale the business. So we'll be spending the money mostly on capacity building and also scaling. So one of the things that we observed is that initially it's easy to grow 10-20% per week. But do we have the foundation to keep growing for the next 3 years, 4 years? So that is what we are focusing on right now. We are focusing on our product. We are focusing on our internal processes, dashboards, panels, to make sure that everything is automated. Everything is super fast, super automated. So that is one of the areas where we are, extremely focused on at the moment. We are also trying to build a very, skilled data team as well. Something that we actually initially did not focus on much. I would say that was one of the drawbacks of our startup. So, but for the last few months, that is somewhere we are actually focusing a lot. So yeah, on one hand, we want to make sure that we have the right foundation to keep growing, and on the other hand, we want to continue the momentum, the growth. And just to give you some numbers, right now we are doing around 800 rides per day, and within the next 2 years, we want to actually grow 30x. We want to provide 25,000 rides per day by the end of 2023.
Nice. I think that is
exciting numbers. So just to compare where you were when we spoke to you, I think it must have been 2 years ago. When we asked those questions, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value of a customer, from where you were then in terms of the customer acquisition cost and lifetime value, where are you now? And with that growth of 30x, where do you think your customer acquisition cost and lifetime value would be in 2023?
Yeah, just to give you the correct context, so one of the key characteristics of our service is that we ask people to sign up for our service. We don't ask them to directly download the app, because not everyone that downloads the app gets to use Shuttle, because we probably do not operate on that route. So initially, we generated 30,000 leads, and we were providing service to 200-300 people. So even though probably I mean, the cost for generating the leads were still similar, but converting those leads has increased significantly at the moment. And going forward, we want to focus on that as well. Just to give you some numbers, initially in the first 24 months, we had like 7 routes in total. But in the last 3 months, we had 51. And also, initially it took us around 80 to 100 signups to launch a new route. But right now, because of the changing business model, it takes only 4 to 6. So the model has become highly scalable, and we feel that is where we want to make sure, signups that we're getting, we want to make sure that we're converting most of them. So for the next 2 years, we already actually have all the data to reach the number of 25,000 daily rides. It's just that we have to launch the route. It's just that we have to match these people more efficiently. So that is the goal, for the next 2 years. And in terms of route, right now we have around 70. We want to take it to 500 within this time period. And just to give you another number, right now it takes around 7 days for us to launch a new route, and we want to reduce it to 24 hours. Before, it took around 6 months.
Okay. So the key takeaway from me from that is, we hear of other questions being asked about those typical metrics, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value. The real key takeaway here is the metrics that matter are these. It's really around the number of routes that you have, the number of daily rides, and the turnaround time to actually get those new routes implemented. So for you, it's not so much, you're not measuring your business success based on the CAC and the LTV, but it's really around how quickly you're initiating new routes, you're getting capacity, you're getting your maximum return on investment, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a good takeaway, because we would typically parrot those types of demands and questions as early stage investors, because we're typically talking about, okay, how many downloads have you had of your app? And in this case, it's not necessarily even relevant. And we get that question as well when I'm talking about a deep tech startup that I'm a co-founder of. We get those questions sometimes, and they're completely not relevant in that particular space. And here you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. There's metrics that matter are the ones that you've mentioned. And usually if you're an angel investor, you need to understand that, and you need to ask that question. What are the metrics that you're measuring for success, so that we can keep track of that and make sure that that they're heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah,
looking at these numbers, to go from 800 rides per day to 25,000 rides per day, that's like a 30x growth that's coming in the next few years. It's exciting times for Shuttle. You have a strong mission. There's a lot of growth. So the question is, for whoever is watching this, how can they support you on this journey?
We are always looking for collaboration opportunities. So on one hand, as Osman mentioned as well, that we have a certain mission that we want to provide safe transportation, especially for women in our countries. So anyone who is interested in those areas, we'd love to collaborate. And then we are also seeing a lot of different startups working in the similar space in different countries. We'd love to get in touch with them. We'd love to know how they're trying to solve the issues, just share ideas and collaborate. And for potential investors as well, we'd love to get in touch. We'd love to discuss what we're doing, what our plans are. And one of the things that I love is, meeting people from the startup ecosystem, because you always get value from them one way or another. So we would love to meet people who are interested to collaborate and also explore other opportunities.
So just to reiterate, how much are you now fundraising for at the moment, and what would be the minimum ticket size if there's anybody watching and they wanted to participate? How would they do that?
Sure. For the next official round, we are actually planning to raise $3 million in June. So that is our main focus right now, to raise $3 million in the Series A round. And we will plan on closing the round by June. But in the meantime, we are also open to small ticket safe investments as well. So that is something that we haven't closed in the last 6 months. So we are talking to people. If someone, we can meet someone interesting, would love to explore that as well. So we take investments as little as $25,000 in safe loan. So that is something that we are always open to discuss.
Okay, great. I think for our next one, we're going to talk through safe notes as well and what they mean, so that we can be the blind leading the blind for everyone.
So thank you, Reyasat, for joining us for this episode of the Clueless Capitalists. We look forward to seeing what Shuttle is going to do over the next few months, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Razi and Osman. I had a really good time talking about our journey and also the future plans. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for your time.